Diane too. I'm glad to be here.
I am super excited to have this conversation with you. So, welcome to We the Neurodivergent podcast. Today with us, we have Clint, who's going to share his story. So, what I've envisioned for this podcast is people first, sharing our stories, creating. I think there is, when it comes to neurodivergence, there are a lot of like ideas, and a lot of it gets pathologized, and there are, diagnoses. We lose perspective that we're talking about a human being. We're talking about like a soul. We're talking about a person. So I'm all about bringing humanity into the conversation and honoring individual stories. And you shared your story with your brother with me some months ago, and it stayed with me. It's like it planted a seed. So thank you for planting the seed. And I was hoping to talk about it on this podcast today. So thank you so much for being here. So let's start us off. Clint, who are you? How would you self-identify? How do you experience yourself? How do you want to be known in the world?
I am on a path of awakening. What that means to me is becoming aware of everything that's going on the planet and saying, okay, that's what is. Not judging anything, acceptance. And then from that place of acceptance, bringing my creativity to the world to up level it, just because up leveling's fun, not because anything needs fixing, just because bringing something, a contribution is enjoyable, feels good.
Yeah,
that's all.
yeah.
So I'm a man that likes to contribute, helping others to up level their peace factor, basically. Yeah, I do that a lot.
You're also someone who enjoys the nature, you shared earlier with me.
Oh, very much. Yeah, I love being off grid. I got a couple of buddies with properties who need, a never ending to-do list. So I travel around and I help people do whatever they need doing on their properties.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I love the life that you've created. And tell, if you don't mind, because you shared it with me, and I think it's just such a fun life trajectory. Where you started off was somewhere way different than where you're now. So where you started off, you were in fine dining, you were in restaurants. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Not at all. Got a job when I was 14 or something in a restaurant, and basically enjoyed serving others and making really good money at the time, and brought me to Vancouver, Canada, where I worked in a seafood restaurant called The Cannery. It's now closed. It was awesome journey of basically a constant party. Just, yeah. You go in for 5 hours or 6 hours, do your shift, make $300, and then go out and blow it, basically. I ended up keeping enough and having the capacity to buy a condo and start to settle down. When I started to realize, well, actually what happened was I had a leaky condo. I call it a gift, because I started to ask questions of how so many people could be affected and no one be seemingly responsible. Are you familiar with the leaky condo crisis that happened up and down the West Coast?
No. What is it?
In the 80s, condos were built by people that didn't know anything about building, but hired subcontractors and built it to profit and C-grade materials and a lack of awareness. The condo I ended up buying had a building that had a rain screen that was put on backwards, and they didn't apparently cap the walls. So 10 years later, on the dark side of the building, people's homes were growing mushrooms on the inside.
Oh man.
And I bought into the condo right when, just before it blew up. And thousands and thousands of people were affected by this. What is it? A toxicity of commerce, of the desire to survive, which is understandable. But what happens when we survive is we do it at the expense of
Right,
others.
right, right.
And now, because we're doing it that way, we can't not but suffer and cause suffering.
Right.
And we were talking about Siddhartha earlier,
Yes.
and he was all about this whole world is about suffering. And it is because we play it the way we do from
Right.
a place of separation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm grateful to have had all those experiences because they led me to where I'm at now, which is in nature, serving others, and about to start a business of oil spill cleanup for the
Mm.
purposes of acquiring other businesses as well. The first business is oil spill cleanup, and to develop a ministry to spread this kind of way of life that I've developed.
Amazing. Remind me to share. I'm going to share. I have to remember. Remind me to share a TED talk with you regarding
Okay.
oil spill
Yes.
cleanup and restoration of ecosystems, because
Awesome.
it's a good one. I took a course in like environmental anthropology or something like that. And the professor shared this podcast with a not podcast, TED talk with us. And I thought it was really, really interesting that there are ways to do it right and to honor Mother Nature and to honor this capitalistic system we bought into, but not at the cost of Mother Nature and each other, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, let me pull
Right.
us back
Right.
into today's conversation. So you're on We the Neurodivergent podcast because your brother was neurodivergent. So you're someone who loved and cared for someone who was neurodivergent. Would you tell us a little bit about your brother?
We bought the condo together in Vancouver, and moved in together. And while we were living together in Vancouver, he started to become depressed and degrade his life by being angry all the time. And he would fabricate experiences. For instance, walking down the street, and a guy down the block, 100 yards away, called him asshole, is what he came up in his head. He believed he was his thoughts.
Right.
And those thoughts said he was an asshole, and he projected on other people that they were reflecting or saying it to them when it was a reflection of his own consciousness expressed. That's what this whole world is a big fat reflection. We get what we give. No, there's no way around that. So my brother, I didn't have an awareness at the time of what was happening. I just saw, I don't get it, Brent. Why would you want to feel this way or think this way? Or to the point where I just got so angry and fed up at the end of my rope. I said, he came in one time angry for the umpteenth time. I said, bro, you're number one. And evil just shrouded his face. And he brushed me over the back of my chair and sat on my chest and started strangling me. And I looked up and I saw more evil than I could even imagine out of Hitler. And I don't know, I had no leverage, and he outweighed me. And the only thing that came to me was to express a love. I said, bro, I put my one free arm behind him, and drew him to me. And I said, give me a hug. Croaked out a give me a hug. He took his hands off my throat, started crying, hugged me back, hugged me back. And that was my first experience with unconditional love, the transformation capacity of that. But my brother continued along his path, and we had to part ways. I had to love him, but from over there,
from afar,
where I was, we couldn't be together. And it sent me on a quest to understand what was going on with him. And through over the years, realized through his shared diagnoses, and it, well, 4 different doctors diagnosed him as schizophrenic, bipolar, manic depressive, and so on, and then applied 4 different pharmaceuticals, and he just went down into a pit and stayed there, and then eventually got into crack and died 2 years ago from a fentanyl overdose.
I'm so sorry.
You know, the reason, we talked a little bit about this, and this is the book, The Disappearance of the Universe I was sharing with you, is that we are not this body, that this is a simulation, that we use this body and these thoughts to play in 3D when we realize that's what's going on.
Right.
When we don't know that's what's going on, then I believe I am my thoughts, I believe I am this body, and now I'm separate from other bodies in a survival game, competing for limited resources, and at the expense of you is the only way I can survive.
But also, like, it's, in many ways, having those mental faculties to be able to separate what is and isn't true, and which voices in our heads are or are not real. It's a privilege, it's a neurotypical privilege.
I'm so grateful. Absolutely. And that's how I look at my brother, as this great teacher, showing. I went so into depth trying to understand and realized that I myself, like, mental illness is a spectrum, and we're all on it.
Right.
Some of us need meds, some need to be taken out of circulation so that they can be helped.
Right.
But most of us are punished for it. I mean, in this world, we're punished for it, right? We get marginalized, and just, he needs to be fixed. The world does not realize that there's a spectrum of mental illness happening. So I'm grateful, because I give my brother so much credit, because I am a better me, to, like, transformed because of his my relationship with him.
You mentioned, when we talked about, like, now, whenever, how many months ago that was, you mentioned listening to your brother and learning so much from him. Would you mind sharing what I thought, this is why I remembered it, because, like, within landmark education, right, we're taught how to listen from nothing, right? How to actually really listen to others versus listening to our thoughts about what they're saying, right?
Absolutely.
And I thought that it was so interesting to bring that distinction to an interaction or conversation with someone who's suffering from delusions and paranoia, and, like, who's no longer able to tell what is real and what is not. And because we as a society, we dismiss folks with schizoaffective afflictions and, like, psychotic episodes. We're just like, oh, they're just crazy, and nobody listens to them. You had the love and the training and the intention to really listen, and I thought that was so revolutionary in a sense. So I was hoping that you might, like, share some of the lessons or some of the things that, like, you woke up to from those conversations with him.
Sure. Over many, like, couple of decades, right? It was 25 years of him declining into his eventual death. But for the awakening that arose in me was to become aware of when I was judging, when I was thinking this isn't right, or I just want him to be at peace, or any number of things that weren't accepting him as he was, just as he is in this moment. And seeing through the body and seeing through his last 20 years and knowing him as an eternal being, perfect reflection, and wanting to practice that for myself as well. Being able to listen to him, it was so interesting because it was like once he was fully heard and there was zero judgment, I had forgiven my judgments of him of myself through him, basically, is what it is. Then it was like he was no longer mentally ill. It was like he was the old Brent. He was like, we had like the last time we saw each other, we talked about the past like it was a story, not a reality. We had a little bit of a cry together, and we had laughs and just a regular conversation about his life, which included crack cocaine. And he was a dabbler, he said. And of course, that's what fentanyl does to dabblers, is kills them. And that's really what happened to him. To me, I was so grateful to have had the capacity to listen and to connect with him on a level that I hadn't ever before he passed.
There's so much
Listening,
beauty.
so critical to remove these judgments.
There's so much beauty and so much wisdom in when it comes to substance use or misuse, and when it comes to mental illness, and when when it comes to all these things, there is a sense of we're not being gotten, we're not being understood by others. There is a sense of shame. There's a lot of internalizing that happens, and to be in a company of someone that's got nothing going on about whatever the rest of the world's got things going on, and judgments and preconceived notions and the ideas how it should be and how it shouldn't be, and you're wrong for this and you should be strong, then like all the noise, to not buy into the noise and to be just like, I'm here and you're my brother and I love you and nothing is wrong, and like you're not wrong, I'm like everything is cool. Like the beauty and the genius of that, because if we were to interact with each other in that way of like you're whole and complete and valid and nothing is wrong, would just leave people so much better. And what you shared is proof of that. But it's also like, I'm studying neuroscience. That sense of belonging does wonders for mental health outcomes. That sense of like not being judged and marginalized or othered in some way does wonders for a sense of self and our mental health as an extension of that. That's so awesome that you were able to create
that. Did I create it? I don't know. I'm grateful to have been moved in that direction, let's say. Or did I create it? Sure, I'll go with that. But what I'm most grateful for is that I'm able to use that with everyone. That teacher that my brother was, that helped me to become the man I am, so that I can perceive the world the way I do and others the way I do. Love everyone as my perfect reflection, as my brother and sister. It's just now I'm in the world without fear. There's still unconscious programs that have yet to be integrated or seen, let go of, and then whatever it's covering, integrated to become a whole self, a whole I. But as they arise, I can feel them. I have this ability now to not react to the sensations in the body, but to go into them and to ask them, to talk to them, to integrate the parts of myself that I said at some point in my lifetimes weren't worthy of my attention. Yeah. And through my relationships, my brother being a massive one, my sister being another, she was my brother and became my sister. This is another opportunity in my life, in my family, just to love through whatever the veneer is.
Yeah.
Like love, and then eventually love the whole. So interesting.
Yeah. I didn't know you had a trans sister. That's so cool. I mean, it's a trip. We as a world still don't quite know what to think or how to be with trans folks, but I love that that it landed in your lap, because you seem to know what to do with these things. You know how to love people well, and how to be with people, and how not to make them wrong and judge them, and how not to do any of the usual, like how not to play into the status quo. You're like, I can be with this. I can love. I can understand. Even if I don't understand, I don't need to understand. I can love. I think that's so.
And more importantly,
powerful.
See the nuggets that are there. Right? The nuggets I gained from my brother and my sister are, I'm a better me because of the both. And the fact that I had a front row seat to both those, I don't know what you'd call them, societal
Paradigms. Yeah.
Paradigms, okay, or curiosities, or just the way we show up as humans in such diverse expressions, right? Just to use those two opportunities I had and to expand them into the whole of humanity. I couldn't have made this up myself. You know, how there's more going on than this physical reality for me to have had a brother and a sister and amazing parents and the world as it is right now, so that I could become who I am.
Yeah.
And love, because it's much more peaceful and fun to love than it is to fear.
Totally. It's a much better game. It's a much better game. No, for sure. That is so cool. I'm also thinking now, apropos the conversations with your brother, I'm also thinking, like, this is a totally separate conversation, but like, there was a whole conversation about queerness, which also exists on a spectrum, right? And trans experience being part of that queer experience on the spectrum. And lately, there's been this like pushback of trans folks being like, but certain trans folks being like, but we're not really trans, and these doctors and these, healthcare professionals that carried out these surgeries, they played us and the system played us, and we're not actually trans. And I was being with like, that's quite a thing to go through, because I mean, not everyone has access to these surgeries, the hormones you have to go, like the whole thing you have to go through to become who you feel you are, to then at the end of that road be like, no, this is not right. I'm not this. This, like, what a trip, right? But I'm thinking, like, that type of listening, if we can just be with people, not trying to get them to be something, not buying into any of the bullshit, but just like being with people, if we could ease some of that pain and confusion, so that no one is unsettled with who they wound up being, right? Like, so we can all be like at peace, trans or not, schizophrenic or not, whatever or not, and like you can just be, that we can be like cool with that. Are you hurting somebody? No, you're good. Like we're good. It's good. What a difference that would make in the world. So I love that you're walking the talk. That's really inspiring and powerful.
Well, thanks, Ivana. I'm doing my best, given my level of consciousness, as I know everyone else in the world is doing the same.
Right. Right. But you've really, it takes something to stay dedicated to this pursuit for as long as you've had, right? Like people dabble in consciousness.
Well, I agree, but check it out. This is why. Because as I undertake this prime directive of mine, which is to clean this consciousness of all separate self-identified programming, now this out here, everything becomes easier. Everything is affected by the work I do within.
Right.
Because it is all in a reflection. So it's just smart. It's just, as opposed to being distracted and attracted to what outside of myself, the inner work to train the attention from rolling around in think. This is the Buddha's gift to humanity, to the awareness of sensations in the body. Now I have a foundation. Now I can begin to perceive the world with some level of intelligence, with awareness.
Right.
That's the only way.
Right. Right. That's the only way to not play into the status quo, to not give into survival and the sort of like base level wiring. That is the only way to create anything new or be
to have a peaceful life.
Yeah.
Right? There will be no peace in the world until there is inner peace.
Amen. Amen. Right. What would you say?
Part of
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's part of that book I was telling you about, The Disappearance of the Universe, based on A Course in Miracles. There's no peace in the world until there's inner peace in each one of us, and each one of us perceives peace in the world by the level of work we've done to create the peace within. Even though it looks like a shit show, I can be at peace with that.
Yeah.
And in my local reality right here, wow, it's awesome. And it's about now expanding this awareness to the whole of the world, and then expressing myself through opportunities with people like yourself and my own expressions digitally or through some sort of a podcast. I haven't decided how I'm going to put it yet.
I want to listen. I'm very enrolled in listening to your stories. I love it. I wanted to ask you, considering that you've had this like insight into, and more than just insight, that like you had this like affinity and opportunity to really love unconditionally folks who are neurodivergent in different expressions of that. What are some of the takeaways? What do you think the world ought to know? Or like lessons learned, wisdom gained? What can you pass on to humanity?
One arising right now. so massive, is that yes, we are unique butterflies. We are unique snowflakes, but all snowflakes are made of water. So we are more alike than we are different. To focus on the alikeness and celebrate the differences is what my big awareness, my big message would be right now. Absolutely. And that's the only way to love that which is different, is to know that inherently we all bleed, we all eat, we all poop, we all what are the likenesses? What do we all do? Focus there, and then develop a system, use the system to create a foundation that supports all these things that we all do. And then don't go, here's the other. Once I realized that, and this is, I call it right selfishness, be about me first, do the inner work first, and then use relationships to up level that work, to forgive myself through the other. Because everyone, this is the holographic nature of reality. The whole is in the part. The ocean is in the drop. And vice versa. Once I look at this and understand this is the universe right here, it's all space. There's nothing that's actually real. Right? Nothing that's physical. Nothing that, yes, I can't put my fist through a wall. But that's because I believe to some degree that I am still this body, and that physicality is real. When what is it? What's the science, right? Quantum physics says that an atom has more space in it than it has physical reality. And so for us to be focused on the physical is to, well, it's a good beginning. Let's not stay there. Right? Let's realize that I'm talking to myself right now.
You're talking to yourself in your phone. You're looking at yourself probably on your phone.
I'm talking to you that is a perfect reflection of me. And if you're smiling in my presence, Ivana, then I'm rocking it.
Oh.
If you're not, I need to look at me. I need to go, okay, what's going on here? And this is, so when I look at the larger world and see Israel and Palestine and all, there is a deeper consciousness here, an unconscious program that's still running that I have yet to tap. But I'm going in that direction. And this is what I understand the Christ path to be.
I hear that. I hear that. I think that there's so many lessons in that conflict specifically. Speaking of realities constructed, that we don't even see what's real and what's not anymore. Stemming from centuries right? On centuries of marginalization and oppression of people that had them be, to begin with, like, we need a place where we can be safe because you lot are fucking crazy. And we are. And then these colonialist, imperialist powers, they're like, just decide, yes, you can have this land. Nobody asked the people living on the land, like, hey, are you cool with like us moving in a bunch of people and then like kicking you out? Like, are you cool with, nobody cares. Because, like the way, European powers be in the world, the way they've been for centuries, that's also something that got created, was we trump on indigenous peoples all around the world. And that's just what we do. And nobody cares. And now we've had, since that got created, it's been a shit show. And again, we have, like, who controls the media, and who owns academia, and who owns these big like social structures that basically guide global discussions. It's really interesting. It's really interesting to see it all play out, and there is no humanity in sight. It's just like more crazy, 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 crazy manipulation, games, woo woo, politics. And I'm like, dude, these are human beings on both sides, human beings, like worthy
It's
and
true.
deserving of safety and love and protection. It's like it's a circle. Like I don't know what to say about any of us and all of us as human beings.
This is what arises for me when I consider global politics, and any interaction on a global basis, and the current powers that be and governments as they are, that everything is interconnected, that
Yes.
this governing consciousness within here
Mm-hmm.
is reflected out there on a global basis. You're familiar with Carl Jung?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
He had the iceberg model that said the top
Yes.
percentage outside the water is the conscious mind, that which we're aware of in
Yes.
our moment to moment, right?
Yes.
And then just below the water is the subconscious, and that's connected to our ancestral lineal programming as well as gifts. And then the depths of this iceberg is the collective unconscious, which connects us with the whole of humanity.
Yeah.
Right. So this mind up here, if it's not trained, is going to express what we're seeing in the world.
Right. Right.
Right. We're all in co-creation of what's happening right now. Yep. And that if guilt arises, this is an opportunity to forgive myself, to get beyond guilt and to understand that as I do that work and make this my number one reason for being, seek ye first the kingdom or queendom of heaven within, and all else would become peace. I paraphrase that, but that's where that's going.
Yeah.
Right. Do this first, and do whatever it takes. Get off the survival wheel, the wheel of race.
Well, that's the thing. I said I was in a conversation with some folks from my graduate program, and I was saying this entire thing right now is an exercise in trauma response on all sides. It's just trauma response. It's just reacting. Everybody's triggered. Everyone is reacting, which is exactly what you were speaking to right now. It's this space of survival and lack and paranoia and like negativity versus being in an expansive conversation of love and kindness and forgiveness and really creation of how do we create a situation that allows everyone to thrive. And that is not the world we've created. We've not created a world that's a stand for everyone's well-being.
Absolutely. This is the blessings of COVID, is that more people are certainly asking questions when previously they did not. Beautiful. It's progressing in that direction. It's all happening. And we're just in a flux that looks like chaos overrun. And it's a pendulum swing. It's all that, right? And it's all going to balance out. It's unity, the awareness of oneness is blossoming, is arising. But we've been so stuck in the identification with the body and a personality that is trauma-based, these thoughts are real, that it's difficult to let go of who I think I am. And really, to not know who I am, it doesn't matter who I am. How am I in this moment? Am I in service? or am I a net taker?
Mm.
Right?
Yes,
It's that simple.
As they say in social justice movements, like, am I part of the solution or am I part of the problem? How are we
Right?
showing up? That's really, yeah, I hear that. I hear that. What do you want folks, and this is like, I mean, and now I'm like bringing it down when you're already up here, but considering that you've had the front row seat to someone's, it sounded like battle with their mind, and what was going on up there, and the fact that we don't choose to be, you know, neurodivergent. It's, in many cases you're born with it, and even if you're not born with it, life happens to you or it doesn't. Like, you get hit in the head or you experience trauma or you don't. Like, we don't have a choice. Or a stroke happens to you or it doesn't. Like, it's not a matter of choice.
No, it's all a spectrum, as
Right.
we've discussed, right? We're born into it. This is born into sin, exactly what we're talking about. Please continue.
Hmm. Hmm. What do you
Born
want?
into the belief in separation is what I mean by that.
Got it. Okay, so that is maybe the message of what you want people to know, that we are born into an already existing conversation of separation when actually we're one. We're all water.
The truth is, we come from one, and we are holographic, perfect reflections of one another. That's right. Even though it looks different, that's the whole part. To look at it as a simulation in a game is almost critical. It, right? And that we come back lifetime after lifetime. I'm not saying religion or anything. I'm just saying the question that arose for me was, what's going on around here? It looks like an insane asylum, and I'm an inmate,
Right.
calling everybody else crazy.
Yes, dude. Yes. Guilty.
So how do I change that?
It's
Right?
me.
Right? Right?
Right.
I'm the main crazy here. I'm the number one crazy. Okay. And not to feel guilt here, just to know where I'm at and begin to take steps back to sanity,
Yeah.
to unity, to awareness,
Wellness.
to wellness, to wholeness, to health. And that looks like being in service to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
For no return.
Yeah.
No suggested donation.
Right. Right.
Just, it feels good to serve.
Yeah.
And then as I serve, this is how I've been able to validate this theory. I travel around and I help people do whatever they need doing. And I make an agreement with them that I will show up at their property and give them a time worth of happy laboring, I call it. And at the end of this time, say a week, say a couple of days, whatever, all I ask is that we have a little discussion and you give back as you're inspired by my generosity and spirit. And if it feels like we got to move on, or we got to part, or you're not happy or whatever, it's a hug and I'm moving on. But 95% of the time, what comes back is food and shelter. Sorry, 100% of the time, food and shelter is happening. 90% of the time, there's money to move on with. And it's time to take the next step. And that's what I was talking about with this podcast, or this business that I'm doing as well. And yeah, I'm no longer a rebel archetype expression. I want to be in society and fully in commerce and fully in, and then blow it up from the inside, kind of like what Neo did to the Smiths.
I love it. No, it's funny that you say that, because, like, I don't know, some minutes ago when we were talking, you were talking about COVID. And I thought to myself, like, yeah, that was the glitch in the matrix, whether we think it was created and, who did it? It was a glitch in the matrix that like gave us all like a moment to breathe and be like, where are we? What are we doing? What have we created? What? Right? And it's funny that you mentioned just the guy who was in my mental story. Yes, indeed. Yeah. I have to say, like, I really want to acknowledge it. I have these conversations for this podcast to humanize these experiences. So we're not like numbers and diagnoses, but so we're human beings, you know, with certain experiences in life. And I think that there is value in those experiences because the way science approaches it, we had this conversation previously too. It's like we treat things as if they exist in a vacuum. And you touched on this, that everything is interconnected. Nothing exists in a vacuum unless you're in a lab, which is an artificial environment. Nothing exists in a vacuum. And studying mental health conditions as if they exist in a vacuum is also Looney Tunes, because like nothing, we're not, our bodies don't exist in a vacuum. We don't, our consciousness doesn't exist in a vacuum. So I really love that, like, these questions, they were designed to sort of tackle certain prejudices and preconceived notions in the world, in the status quo. I love that you blew all that shit out and like just like amplified it to the nth degree. I love the expansiveness you brought to the conversation. So I really want to acknowledge you for that. I really want to thank you for that, because it's not about like, oh, this understanding is not so good. You're just like, this whole thing is a bullshit story. What like, when are we going to get good with that? And what are we going to create instead? I love that. I love that.
Right? That's so interesting you bring it up like that. And thank you for the platform to share.
No,
Wonderful,
thank you
Ivana.
for agreeing. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one thing that arises, well, a couple of things, but one thing I'll speak to is the idea that to bring the humanness into it. You've heard of this body as being a vessel, right?
Right.
And I'm sure everyone has. Well, in the simulation theory, this is exactly that, a vessel that I, as the essence that animates, uses this body, this vessel, to interact with others. And this is, when we're aware of this, this will become a functional reality. And we will play in the garden that is planet Earth.
Yeah.
Sometimes known as Eden. But that's in the mythology.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
This is we could go in so many directions with this conversation. There's no better basis for vocabulary, for language than this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the expansiveness of the conversation. Thank you for the wisdom and the insights shared. Thank you for the intimate stories with your family members, and the impact that had. It's so beautiful, I always think, when we're able to make lemonade, you know? And not just engage with like, oh, I was served shit or like lemon, and that's not very, like, when we don't get caught up in the conversation of like make wrong, what that instead makes available when we
right
in the conversation of forgiveness and love. So thank you for
absolutely
that. So good, so good.
Everything is happening perfectly and for my benefit. Right? Everything is happening perfectly and for my benefit is a mantra I use on a regular basis. Making lemonade out of lemons.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a contribution in this conversation and beyond, like in the world. Thank you for being a contribution in the world, because I feel like that comes first. this podcast is just a snippet, is the drop of the ocean. I love that analogy that like the ocean is in the drop, and I'm like, oh, the potential. If we just honor the drop, if we just honor the drop.
There we go. Our own drop.
Yeah.
Our own drop.
Yes.
Right. And then expand and oh my God, there's so much. Thank you. Wow, I'm amped.
Yay, I'm amped. Thank you so much for who you are and the contribution that you are in the world. Thank you. This has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
I'm gonna stop recording now.